My name is Peter Anderson, and at 72 years old, I never expected to be calling 911 on Christmas Day. Family gatherings are supposed to be about turkey and presents, not what I discovered in my son David's kitchen. When I started feeling dizzy during dinner and went for water, what I found behind that pantry door changed everything I thought I knew about my own flesh and blood. Before I tell you my story, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and subscribe if stories about family secrets interest you. I spent 43 years as a high school chemistry teacher before retiring. Teaching was my passion, but family always came first. My wife Linda and I had one son, David. Linda passed away 3 years ago after a brutal battle with pancreatic cancer, leaving just David and me. The grief nearly broke me, but I kept going because I still had my son. David is 45 now, a pharmaceutical sales representative with what I thought was a stable career. He always had an interest in chemistry like his old man, but preferred the business side of things. For 15 years, he was married to Jessica, a wonderful woman who I still consider a daughter. They seemed happy, hosting barbecues in their suburban home, taking vacations to national parks, and living what appeared to be the American dream. Then about 18 months ago, everything changed. The divorce blindsided me. David claimed they had grown apart, but Jessica's tearful phone call told a different story. She mentioned David becoming secretive, staying out late, and being obsessed with money. I tried to mediate, to understand both sides, but David shut me out whenever I asked questions. After the divorce was finalized, David transformed. He sold their modest home and moved to an upscale neighborhood across town into a house that seemed far beyond what a pharmaceutical salesman could afford. His circle of friends changed completely. The fishing buddies and couples they socialized with for years disappeared, replaced by people I had never met. When David first mentioned his new girlfriend Stephanie during our monthly phone calls, I was hopeful. Perhaps she was a positive influence. But something felt off in our video chats. Stephanie was 32, strikingly attractive with perfect blonde hair and an academic vocabulary that suggested intelligence. She claimed to work in pharmaceutical research but changed the subject whenever I asked specifics. The physical changes in David worried me most. My once robust son had lost at least 30 pounds. His face appeared gaunt, his movements jittery with nervous energy. During our increasingly rare visits, he would take frequent bathroom breaks and return with dilated pupils and renewed energy. When his phone rang, he would step outside to take calls, speaking in hushed tones. Most concerning was the sudden financial upgrade in lifestyle. Despite what must have been substantial divorce costs, David now drove a luxury sports car, wore designer clothes, and had that new house with all the latest gadgets. When I gently questioned the source of this newfound wealth, he snapped that his side business investments were none of my concern. For months, I tried to reconnect with my son. I invited him to dinner, suggested fishing trips like we used to take, even offered to help with projects around his new house. Each attempt was met with excuses or outright rejection. Our weekly calls became monthly, then almost stopped entirely. That's why the Christmas dinner invitation caught me by surprise. It came via text message 3 days before Christmas. Dad, Stephanie and I want you to join us for Christmas dinner. Meeting some friends. 5 p.m. No warmth, no details, but it was more connection than I'd had in months. I called back immediately, and David answered, sounding distracted. I thought we could reconnect, he said. Stephanie's cooking. Nothing fancy, but something in his tone felt rehearsed. The day before Christmas, Jessica called me out of the blue. We had maintained contact after the divorce. Occasional coffee meets where she would ask about my health and I would avoid prying about the failed marriage. This call was different. Peter, are you seeing David tomorrow? Her voice trembled slightly. Yes. Christmas dinner at his new place. Have you been there? A pause. No, but be careful. David's involved in something. I don't know what exactly, but it scared me enough to leave. What do you mean, Jessica? Just observe everything. Trust your instincts. She hung up before I could ask more questions. I spent a sleepless night debating whether to go. My son had become a stranger, but he was still my son. Perhaps this dinner was a genuine attempt to mend our relationship. Despite Jessica's cryptic warning and my own reservations, I decided to attend. I would bring Linda's famous apple pie recipe as a peace offering, along with our family photo album. Maybe reminiscing about happier times would break through whatever wall David had built. The next morning, I drove past David's new neighborhood gate, noting the security cameras monitoring the entrance. His house stood apart from neighbors, with professional landscaping and more security cameras discreetly placed along the roofline. Before I could ring the bell, David opened the door, checking his watch as though my arrival precisely at 5 was unexpected. "You're here," he said flatly. No hug, no warm greeting. As I stepped inside, I noticed something odd. Interior doors with keypads. Who puts locks on bedroom and office doors? The house felt like a beautiful museum, pristine and unlived in. I would soon discover why. David's new home looked like something from an architectural magazine. Cathedral ceilings, marble floors, and modern art that probably cost more than my car. I clutched the homemade apple pie in one hand and the family photo album in the other, suddenly feeling small and out of place. "I made Mom's apple pie," I said, trying to spark some warmth. David took the pie without comment and led me through to the expansive, open-concept living area, where Stephanie was arranging appetizers on a glass dining table. She wore a red cocktail dress that seemed excessive for a family dinner, diamond earrings catching the light as she turned. "Mr. Anderson, finally we meet in person." Her handshake was firm, fingers cold. Up close, her perfection seemed almost manufactured, skin too smooth, smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Call me Peter, please." I offered the photo album. Thought David might enjoy a trip down memory lane. Something flashed across Stephanie's face. Annoyance quickly masked. How thoughtful. "We'll have to look at that later." The album disappeared into a drawer. Conversation closed. David introduced me to the other guests. 4 couples, all in their 30s or 40s, all connected to what he vaguely described as work. Thomas and Ariana, both marketing executives. James and Kara, who owned a distribution company. Michael and Sophie, described only as consultants. Blake and Natalie, who exchanged a glance when introduced as financial backers. The atmosphere felt strange, conversations stopping when I approached, resuming with forced laughter after I passed. They spoke in technical jargon about market penetration, test groups, and overseas expansion. When I mentioned David's childhood interest in chemistry sets, the room went awkwardly silent. Dad was a chemistry teacher, David finally explained. Boring high school stuff, not pharmaceutical grade, Stephanie added with a smirk that triggered nervous laughter. I wandered the living room while drinks were prepared, noticing the sterile quality of the space. No photographs, no personal mementos. The bookshelves held design books that appeared untouched, arranged by color rather than content. A single locked briefcase sat near the kitchen entrance, incongruous with the carefully staged decor. At the bar, Stephanie prepared what she called her special Christmas punch, while David distributed glasses. I noticed him precisely measuring liquids with bartending tools, Stephanie checking each pour with unusual scrutiny. "Everyone must try my Christmas punch," Stephanie announced. "It's a family recipe." The guests exchanged knowing looks that made me uncomfortable. When David handed me the bright red concoction, I politely declined. "Just water for me, thanks." "Medication," I lied, patting my pocket. David frowned. "You never mentioned new medication. Recent prescription. Nothing serious." Something told me to stay clear-headed. Dinner was served with theatrical flourish. The turkey looked professional, sides arranged with artistic precision. Everything glistened a bit too much, colors unusually vibrant. As we took our seats, I noticed David and Stephanie exchanging glances, watching as guests took their first bites. "This new formulation is incredible," Thomas said after tasting the cranberry sauce. "Much better balanced than the last trial run," Ariana agreed. Both statements making little sense for Christmas dinner. I picked at my food cautiously, noticing the unusual flavors. The turkey had an almost metallic aftertaste, the gravy thicker than normal with specks of something unidentifiable. When Stephanie insisted I try her special stuffing, I took the smallest, polite portion possible. 20 minutes into dinner, I began feeling strange. A slight tingling started in my lips, spreading to my tongue. The lights seemed suddenly brighter, conversations echoing oddly in my ears. Looking around, I noticed other guests exhibiting unusual behaviors. Michael's pupils had expanded dramatically, his speech becoming slurred as he gesticulated wildly. Kara had removed her shoes and was rubbing her feet on the carpet, mumbling about sensory enhancement. Most disturbing was watching David and Stephanie. While appearing to participate in dinner, they ate very little, instead observing guests with clinical interest. Stephanie had produced a small notebook and was jotting observations. David kept checking his watch, occasionally whispering data to her. "Is everyone enjoying dinner?" Stephanie asked, her voice sounding distant to my increasingly foggy mind. "The onset is faster than predicted," Blake responded, a completely inappropriate comment for a dinner party. My water glass was empty, my mouth uncomfortably dry. The room began tilting slightly, walls breathing in and out in my peripheral vision. I needed to clear my head. "David, could I get some water, please?" My words sounded wrong, slightly slurred. "I'll get it." David stood quickly. No, I insisted, rising unsteadily. "Just point me to the kitchen. Need to stretch my legs anyway." David and Stephanie exchanged a look that sent alarm bells ringing through my confusion. "I'll show you," David said, moving to escort me. "Son, I can find a kitchen by myself." I tried to sound firm, normal. "Finish your conversation." Reluctantly, David pointed to the archway. "Through there, glasses in the cabinet left of the sink." As I walked away, I heard Stephanie whisper harshly, "Did he eat the stuffing?" And David's response, "Some, not much. He's resistant as always." My legs felt wobbly as I made my way to the kitchen, the hallway stretching and contracting in my vision. Something was very wrong. Jessica's warning echoed in my mind. Whatever was happening, I needed that water and a moment alone to think. The kitchen looked normal at first glance, modern stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. I found a glass and filled it from the refrigerator dispenser, drinking deeply. As the cold water hit my system, my vision cleared slightly. That's when I noticed something odd. A pantry door left slightly ajar, a sliver of blue light shining through the crack. Curiosity and concern propelled me forward. I pushed the pantry door open, expecting shelves of food. Instead, I found myself staring at a hidden room that would forever change my understanding of who my son had become. The pantry door opened to reveal not food storage, but a secondary space that had been converted into some kind of laboratory. Fluorescent blue lights illuminated stainless steel tables covered with equipment I recognized from my teaching days, but far more sophisticated. Digital scales, pill presses, chemical distillation equipment, centrifuges, and dozens of labeled containers lined the walls. My chemistry background kicked in as I scanned the setup, recognition dawning with horrifying clarity. This was a drug manufacturing operation, not some innocent pharmaceutical research. One table held rows of perfectly pressed pills in various colors. Another displayed crystalline substances in different stages of production. The air carried the distinct chemical odors I had warned students about for decades. Moving deeper into the room on unsteady legs, I examined labels on containers. Many contained chemical compounds I recognized from teaching, precursors used to synthesize controlled substances. Others held completed products labeled with codes rather than names. Compound K7, Enhanced MDMA, Neurostimulant V4. A refrigerator hummed in the corner, filled with vials of liquids requiring cold storage. On a desk against the back wall sat an open laptop displaying spreadsheets. The column headings made my blood run cold. Subject ID, dosage, response time, peak effects, duration, adverse reactions. Next to the laptop lay a black leather journal. I flipped it open with trembling hands to find detailed notes in what appeared to be Stephanie's handwriting. Day 94. Compound K7 modification shows promise. Test subjects report enhanced euphoria with reduced cardiac effects compared to standard formulations. Ready for expanded human trials at Christmas gathering. Subject 12 showed concerning liver values after third exposure. Adjusted synthesis to reduce hepatotoxicity. Requires verification with naive subjects. I turned more pages, horror mounting as I read clinical descriptions of volunteer subjects who had experienced everything from mild hallucinations to seizures. The last entry, dated December 24th, chilled me completely. Christmas protocol finalized. 8 subjects with varying physiological profiles. Modified compounds in cranberry sauce, turkey marinade, and stuffing with escalating potency. Primary objective: determine optimal delivery method and dosage for international distribution package. Secondary objective: observe interaction effects in social setting. Monitoring. D will record cardiovascular metrics. S will document behavioral divided by psychological responses. The wall above the desk displayed photos of previous gatherings. With shocking clarity, I recognized several faces from tonight's dinner table in older pictures, alongside strangers with dilated pupils and disoriented expressions. Each photo had clinical notes attached. Subject responded to Formula B with appropriate euphoria, but excessive motor impairment. Subject shows promising tolerance development, increased dose by 15% at next trial. A shipping manifest on a clipboard caught my attention next. International addresses in countries I barely recognized. Quantities that suggested large-scale distribution. Price points that explained David's sudden wealth. This wasn't just experimentation. It was a global drug operation with my son at the center. In the adjacent room, I heard Stephanie's voice on a phone call. Yes, live trial proceeding now. 8 subjects with varying profiles. Preliminary results suggest Formula K7 has commercial viability across all demographics. Older subjects showing resistance may need adjusted protocol. The realization hit me with physical force. I was one of their test subjects. The dinner, the special recipes, everyone's strange behavior. It all clicked into horrible place. David and Stephanie were using their guests as human guinea pigs for designer drug formulations they planned to sell internationally. My heart raced painfully, vision narrowing as panic set in. The mild exposure I'd had from the small amount of food I'd consumed was already affecting me. What about the others who had eaten full portions? I steadied myself against the desk, knocking a small vial to the floor where it shattered. The noise seemed thunderous in my ears. My phone slipped from my trembling hands, sliding under a refrigeration unit beyond reach. I needed to call for help, but how? The landline in the kitchen seemed miles away through the fog descending on my consciousness. Looking back at the laptop, one spreadsheet tab labeled "Previous Trials" revealed the most horrifying information. 3 names followed by terminal cardiac event, and subject expired during trial. People had died. These weren't just illegal drugs. They were potentially lethal compounds being served to unsuspecting guests. And to me, his father, the cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. This meticulous, dangerous operation was being run by my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike. The teenager I stayed up with practicing chemistry formulas, the man who held my hand at his mother's funeral. How had he become this stranger? When did my child turn into someone who could coldly observe suffering as data points? My grief transformed into determination as I heard footsteps approaching. If guests were being drugged without consent, if previous subjects had died, and if they were preparing for international distribution, this wasn't just illegal, it was monstrous. I had spent my life teaching young people to respect chemistry and its power. Now I needed to stop my own son from perverting that knowledge. Footsteps grew louder. I needed to appear normal while figuring out how to get help. With clumsy movements, I attempted to restore the laboratory to how I found it, kicking glass shards under the table, and prepared to face whoever was coming to find me. I managed to slide back through the pantry door just as David entered the kitchen. I stood at the sink, refilling my water glass, trying to control my shaking hands. "Dad, you've been in here a while." David's voice carried false concern. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile, though my face felt numb. "Just needed some water." Feeling a bit strange. David's eyes narrowed. Clinical assessment replacing filial concern. Strange, how exactly? Dizzy, tingling lips. Maybe I'm coming down with something. I tried to keep my voice steady, fighting the effects of whatever I'd consumed. That's interesting. The detached way he said it confirmed my worst fears. My son was observing symptoms, not worrying about my welfare. Let me help you back to the table. I set my glass down, stalling. David, what's in that room behind the pantry? His posture changed instantly, shoulders tensing. What room? Don't lie to me, son. I saw the lab. I leaned against the counter for support. What have you gotten yourself into? David's face transformed, the mask of normalcy dropping away. His eyes darted to the pantry door, then back to me with cold calculation. You shouldn't have gone in there, Dad. Those people out there. I gestured toward the dining room. Do they know they're test subjects? Do they know about the deaths? A flicker of surprise crossed his face. You read too much, in too little time. Stephanie appeared in the doorway, her perfect smile gone. Problem? Her gaze moved between us, assessing. Dad got curious about our operation. David's voice was flat. Stephanie approached me, taking my wrist. I pulled away, but not before she checked my pulse. Mild exposure, elevated heart rate, pupils dilated but not maximally. Cognitive function seems intact. She spoke as if I weren't there. I'm calling the police, I stated firmly, though we all knew it was an empty threat with no phone in reach. David laughed, a hollow sound, nothing like the warm laugh I remembered. And tell them what? That you took unknown substances and hallucinated a drug lab? Who would believe you? Son, I tried to reach the man I raised. Whatever you're involved in, we can fix this. These are dangerous chemicals. People could die. They have died, according to your records. Acceptable risk calculations, Stephanie interjected coldly. Pharmaceutical companies do the same thing. They just hide it better. This isn't about creating medicine, I argued. It's about making dangerous recreational drugs. You're exploiting people. It's about freedom, David countered. Chemical experiences without government oversight. And yes, it's about money. Do you know what Jessica took in the divorce? Everything. This partnership, he nodded toward Stephanie, saved me from financial ruin. The pieces clicked together. Stephanie recruited you, used your pharmaceutical connections and chemistry background. I recognized his potential, she confirmed. David understands molecular structures better than most researchers with doctorates. Together, we've created compounds that will revolutionize the market. Market? You mean illegal drug trade? My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Dad, you should just go back. Enjoy the experience. The effects are actually quite pleasant if you don't fight them. David's tone was almost pleading now. And if I refuse? If I warn your guests? David and Stephanie exchanged looks. Then you'll need stronger convincing, Stephanie replied. I pushed past them, staggering into the dining room where the scene had deteriorated. Thomas lay sprawled on the floor, Ariana kneeling beside him, laughing uncontrollably at nothing. James had removed his shirt, sweating profusely while describing colors in the air only he could see. Most disturbing was Michael, convulsing in his chair, eyes rolled back, while Sophie filmed him on her phone with detached interest. Stop this, I shouted. These people need medical attention. Blake looked up, pupils so dilated, his eyes appeared black. Medical attention? Why? This is the best product yet. His words slurred together, hand reaching for more stuffing. You've all been drugged without consent, I announced. This is an illegal test. We need to call 911. Stephanie was beside me instantly, grip surprisingly strong on my arm. Our guests are willing participants, Peter. They know exactly what they're consuming. Some nodded vaguely, too impaired to comprehend, while others seemed genuinely confused by my outburst. Not all of them, I challenged. And what about previous guests who died? A flash of recognition crossed Kara's face. Died? What's he talking about, David? David stepped forward, attempting damage control. Dad's having a bad reaction. Paranoid delusions can happen with first-time users. I locked eyes with Kara, the only one showing concern. There's a lab behind the pantry. Records of deaths. International distribution plans. They're using us to test new formulations. David grabbed a glass from the table, approaching me. Dad, drink this. It will calm you down. I knocked it away, liquid splashing across the marble floor. I'm not taking anything else. These people need help. The confrontation escalated as David tried to restrain me, grabbing my shoulders with surprising strength. I might be older, but adrenaline and decades of working with my hands gave me enough power to break free. We struggled, knocking into the dining table, sending dishes crashing. Michael's convulsions worsened, foam appearing at the corners of his mouth. Sophie finally showed concern, dropping her phone. He's not breathing right. Standard adverse reaction, Stephanie stated clinically. It will pass. I needed to create a distraction. Find a phone. The Christmas tree in the corner provided the opportunity. As David reached for me again, I stumbled backward into the 12-foot tree, sending it crashing down in a shower of ornaments and lights. In the ensuing chaos, I made my escape down the hallway, searching for a bedroom that might have a phone. Behind me, I heard Stephanie's sharp orders. Lock the front door. Don't let anyone leave. David, stop your father. I found the master bedroom and slammed the door shut, frantically searching for anything to barricade it with. A heavy dresser screeched across hardwood as I pushed it against the door, just as David began pounding from the other side. Dad, open this door. You're making everything worse. My only hope was finding a communication device. I ransacked drawers, checked bedside tables, and finally spotted a landline phone partially hidden under designer pillows. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911, praying the call would connect before David broke through. The 911 operator answered on the second ring, her calm voice a lifeline in the chaos. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Peter Anderson, I began, words tumbling out between labored breaths. I'm at 1427 Lakeside Drive. People are being drugged. There's an illegal drug lab. Multiple people need medical attention. The pounding on the door intensified, wood splintering around the hinges. The dresser barricading the entrance began to slide. Sir, slow down, the dispatcher instructed. Are you in immediate danger? Yes. The word emerged as a desperate gasp. My son and his girlfriend are running a drug manufacturing operation. They're testing experimental compounds on dinner guests. At least one person is having seizures. I found records showing previous test subjects have died. I could hear the dispatcher typing rapidly, voice remaining professionally detached. And your son is forcing people to take these substances? They put them in the food. Christmas dinner. Most guests don't know. My vision blurred around the edges, the effects of whatever I'd consumed intensifying under stress. I don't have much time. Please send police and ambulances. People could die. Sir, are you also under the influence of these substances? I ate very little, but yes, I'm experiencing effects. Dizziness, visual disturbances, a crash from the door as David's shoulder connected with it. Please hurry. Emergency services are being dispatched to your location. Can you stay on the line? The dresser moved another inch as David rammed the door again. I'll try, but my son is breaking down the door. With a final crash, the door frame splintered. David burst into the room, face contorted with rage and panic. I dropped the phone but didn't disconnect, hoping the dispatcher would hear what followed. Who did you call? David lunged toward me, grabbing my wrist. The police are coming, son. I didn't resist, too exhausted and affected by the drugs to fight. It's over. Do you have any idea what you've done? His voice cracked with emotion for the first time. They'll put me away for decades. Was that your plan? To destroy your only son? The cruel irony of his accusation struck me. I'm trying to save you, David. And those people out there. This path you're on only ends one way. Stephanie appeared in the doorway. Clinical detachment replaced by cold fury. He called 911. We need to clear everything. Now. It's too late, I said. I told them about the lab, the tests, everything. Even if you clean up, they'll find evidence. David's grip on my wrist loosened as reality sank in. For a brief moment, I saw fear in my son's eyes, not fear of arrest, but something deeper, recognition of consequences, of lives he had put at risk, including mine. Dad, I never meant for you to be involved in this. His voice softened. This was supposed to be my way out. After Jessica took everything, so you decided to risk killing people for profit? I challenged, disappointment and heartbreak evident in every word. I taught you chemistry to help people, not poison them. Stephanie interrupted our moment of connection. David, we don't have time for this. We have contingency plans. Grab what you can from the lab. Wipe down surfaces. We need to be gone in 4 minutes. David hesitated, looking between Stephanie and me. What about my father? The guests? Collateral damage, she stated coldly. Let the authorities deal with them. Our priority is extraction. The casual cruelty with which she dismissed human lives, my life seemed to shake something loose in David. He stared at her as if truly seeing her for the first time. I used his moment of doubt to press further. Son, you can stop this now. Help those people out there. Take responsibility. A crash from elsewhere in the house interrupted us. Voices shouted, "Police! Everyone down!" Stephanie cursed, turning to flee. David stood frozen, indecision written across his face. "It's over," I whispered. His shoulders slumped in defeat or perhaps relief. "I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted." His apology was cut short as Stephanie reappeared with a small black bag. "David, now. Extraction route." David looked at her, then back to me lying on the floor, drug-affected and injured from our struggle. I saw the moment he made his choice. He stepped toward me, kneeling down. "I can't leave my father," he told her. "He needs medical attention." Stephanie's beautiful face contorted with disgust. "Sentimental weakness. That's always been your flaw." She turned and disappeared down the hallway alone. David helped me to a sitting position as heavy footsteps approached. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, this time with genuine remorse that reminded me of the little boy who had broken his mother's favorite vase and confessed immediately. When police officers burst through the door with weapons drawn, David raised his hands immediately. "My father needs medical attention," he said clearly. "There are 8 other people in the dining room who have been exposed to experimental psychoactive compounds. One was having seizures when I last saw him. The officers secured David while calling for paramedics. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was my son reciting chemical formulations to a paramedic, providing information that might save lives even as police officers secured his wrists with handcuffs. White ceiling tiles came into focus as I regained consciousness, the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment replacing the chaos of David's home. An IV line ran into my arm. Heart monitors adhered to my chest. My mouth felt desert dry, head pounding with each heartbeat. "Mr. Anderson?" A nurse appeared above me, checking monitors. "You're at Mercy General Hospital. You've been unconscious for 2 days." 2 days? My voice emerged as a rasp. She offered ice chips. "The substances in your system were unlike anything our toxicologists had seen before. Powerful synthetic compounds." Memories flooded back the lab. The convulsing dinner guest, David's face as police arrived. "The other guests? Are they all right?" The nurse's expression tightened. "I'll let the doctor explain. She'll be here shortly." Dr. Patel arrived 15 minutes later, a clipboard in hand and fatigue etched into her features. "Mr. Anderson, I'm glad to see you conscious. You're very lucky. Your limited consumption of the contaminated food probably saved your life. What about the others?" I pressed. She sat in the visitor's chair, voice gentle but direct. 2 guests didn't survive. Thomas Reynolds and Michael Clark experienced fatal reactions to the compounds. Their cardiovascular systems simply couldn't handle the stress. 3 others remain in intensive care with uncertain prognoses. The remaining 3 are stable but still experiencing neurological effects. The news hit me like a physical blow. People had died at my son's dinner table. Despite my warning, despite my intervention, I hadn't been fast enough to save everyone. And my son, David Anderson, in police custody. That's all I know. She checked my vitals. "A detective has been waiting to speak with you when you're stable. Do you feel up to answering some questions?" I nodded weakly. What choice did I have? Detective Ramirez entered after Dr. Patel left, a heavy-set man with kind eyes that contrasted with his intimidating build. He recorded my statement about everything I had witnessed, occasionally asking clarifying questions. I told him about the lab, the records of previous deaths, the shipping manifests. Your son has been more cooperative since learning you were hospitalized, Ramirez informed me. He's provided information about the operation, though his partner Stephanie Lawson remains at large. What happens to David now? I asked, dreading the answer. He's facing serious charges, Mr. Anderson. Illegal drug manufacturing, distribution, involuntary manslaughter, criminal negligence, international trafficking. The list is substantial. He paused, watching my reaction. I should mention that he explicitly stated you had no knowledge of his activities. He was quite insistent about your innocence. At least he hadn't tried to implicate me. Small comfort given everything else. How long had this been going on, I asked. Based on financial records and his statements, approximately 18 months. The operation began shortly after his divorce. The timeline aligned with David's personality changes. While I processed this information, a nurse announced another visitor. Jessica stood in the doorway, eyes red from crying. I'll return tomorrow for any follow-up questions, Detective Ramirez said, excusing himself. Jessica approached hesitantly, placing flowers on the bedside table. Peter, I'm so sorry. I should have been more direct with my warnings. You knew about the drugs? I asked, not accusingly but trying to understand. Not the full extent, no. She sat where the detective had been. But I found strange chemicals in our garage about 2 years ago. David claimed they were samples from work. Then I discovered large cash deposits in an account I didn't know about. When I confronted him, he became so angry, so unlike himself, that I became frightened. Why didn't you go to the police? I did, eventually. They investigated but found nothing conclusive. David was careful. After that, he became paranoid, accusing me of trying to ruin him. She wiped away tears. The divorce wasn't my choice, Peter. He pushed me away, became obsessed with what he called his real work with Stephanie. I think she had been recruiting him for months, even while we were married. Jessica's revelations continued, filling in gaps I had missed. David's gradual withdrawal from family life, secret meetings, unexplained absences, signs I should have recognized but had attributed to normal marriage problems or grief over his mother's death. Over the next week in the hospital, I received more visitors. A psychiatrist helped me process the trauma and guilt. Friends brought cards and well wishes, though many seemed uncertain how to interact with the father of an accused drug manufacturer. The local news ran stories about the Christmas dinner drug lab, keeping the tragedy fresh in public consciousness. Despite doctors' recommendations, I insisted on seeing David once I was discharged. The jail visitation room was cold and sterile, surveillance cameras monitoring our reunion from multiple angles. David appeared in standard issue orange, weight loss even more pronounced, dark circles under his eyes. Dad, his voice cracked. You shouldn't have come. Where else would I be? I asked simply. What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. David alternated between defensive justifications and bitter accusations. He blamed Jessica for the financial pressure, blamed me for not supporting him more after the divorce, blamed the broken system that made his illegal venture seem necessary. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything, he spat. I lost your mother, I reminded him quietly. I didn't turn to harming others. He had no response to that, anger deflating into sullen silence. I visited his attorney afterward, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret, who outlined the case against David in clinical detail. The charges were substantial, the evidence overwhelming. Her strategy focused on cooperation for leniency rather than fighting the charges. If he continues providing information about the operation, and especially about Stephanie Lawson's whereabouts, he might avoid a life sentence, she explained. But he's looking at 20 years minimum, given the deaths involved. Financial reality set in quickly. Legal fees mounted. David's frozen assets couldn't be used for his defense. I made the difficult decision to sell my home of 40 years, downsizing to a small apartment to afford Margaret's retainer. The media attention grew as details emerged about the international scope of the operation. Former colleagues at the high school called with awkward condolences. Church friends stopped including me in gatherings. The isolation grew alongside my determination to understand how my son had gone so wrong. I obtained permission to collect personal items from David's seized home. Escorted by officers, I searched for any remnant of the boy I raised. Among designer clothes and expensive electronics, I finally found a small box containing family photos, his mother's wedding ring, and notes from chemistry classes I had taught him at our kitchen table. Somewhere inside the criminal was still my son. 6 months passed as David's case moved through the legal system. Spring bloomed outside my new apartment window, life continuing despite the fracture in my world. My physical recovery progressed steadily, though doctors warned some neurological effects might be permanent occasional tremors in my right hand, sensitivity to bright lights, memory lapses, small prices compared to what others had paid. David's transformation in prison surprised me. Initial visits had been hostile, David blaming everyone but himself. But as weeks turned into months, something shifted. Perhaps it was the mandatory counseling, perhaps the reality of facing consequences, or perhaps some fundamental decency reasserting itself. "I've been thinking about Thomas and Michael a lot," he said during a visit in May, the first time he had mentioned his victims by name, their families, their kids growing up without fathers because of what I did. "Have you reached out to them?" I asked. My lawyer advised against it, but I wrote letters apologizing. Whether they read them or not, I needed to acknowledge what I took from them. The breakthrough came in June. I arrived for our weekly visit to find David looking different, cleaner, more present, eyes clear for the first time in years. "I need to tell you everything, Dad," he began without preamble. No excuses, no shifting blame, just the truth. For 2 hours, he spoke while I listened. How Stephanie had approached him at a pharmaceutical conference during his marriage, recognizing his chemistry knowledge and financial vulnerability after bad investments. How initial involvement had seemed minor consulting on molecular structures, introducing her to contacts. How after the divorce, full participation offered escape from financial ruin. "I knew what we were making was dangerous," he admitted. "I told myself the doses were controlled, that users chose their experiences. I convinced myself we were providing freedom, not poison." His voice broke, but I knew better. I knew exactly what those compounds could do. I just didn't care enough to stop. "Why did you invite me to Christmas dinner?" I finally asked the question that had haunted me. David's eyes filled with tears. Stephanie insisted. She wanted to observe how the compounds affected someone older. I should have refused. He met my gaze directly. "But part of me wanted you to see my success, even if you didn't know what it really was." How pathetic is that? Seeking my father's approval for a drug operation. And when I discovered the truth, I panicked. But when Stephanie called you collateral damage, he shook his head. Something broke through. "I couldn't let anything happen to you, even if it meant getting caught." His cooperation with authorities expanded after our conversation. He provided detailed formulations of all compounds, helping treat affected victims. He identified international contacts, supply chains, distribution networks. When Stephanie was finally apprehended trying to cross into Canada, it was largely due to information David had provided. I struggled balancing supporting my son while acknowledging his crimes. The families of Thomas and Michael wanted nothing to do with me, understandably. But Kara, who had recovered physically if not emotionally, reached out. Over coffee one afternoon, she shared her perspective. "I thought I was participating in pharmaceutical research," she explained. "James and I met Stephanie at an investment seminar. She presented it as an exclusive opportunity to test recreational substances before they received private club distribution. We were naive and greedy." "Did you know about the previous deaths?" I asked. "Never." David seemed uncomfortable sometimes, but Stephanie was always reassuring. She had explanations for everything. Kara's hands trembled around her mug. "I still have nightmares about Michael convulsing while I just watched, too impaired to help." I began volunteering at a drug education program, sharing my story with parents and teenagers, not glorifying or sensationalizing, but offering hard truths about how addiction and crime can hide behind successful facades, how loving someone doesn't make you immune to their deception. The work gave purpose to my pain. Each week, I made the drive to visit David. We rebuilt our relationship brick by brick. conversation by conversation. I brought chemistry journals, crossword puzzles, news about former neighbors, normal things to counterbalance the abnormal circumstances. The victims' families eventually permitted me to attend a memorial service, standing at a distance to pay respects without intruding on their grief. Afterward, Thomas's teenage son approached me. "My dad talked about you," he said unexpectedly, after the divorce group. "Said you were helping him through it." I hadn't known Thomas and I shared that connection. "Your father was kind to me too. I don't forgive your son," he stated clearly. "But you tried to save my dad. Thank you for that." Those simple words helped me sleep better that night than I had in months. David's sentencing finally arrived in late autumn. He received 25 years with possibility of parole, after 15 less than the maximum due to his cooperation, but still a lifetime. Standing before the court, he declined his attorney's suggestion to plead for leniency. "I cannot undo the harm I've caused," he told the judge, voice steady. "I can only acknowledge it fully and accept whatever consequences this court deems appropriate. I particularly want to apologize to the families of those who died because of my actions, and to my father, who taught me better than this." I sold my remaining assets and moved to a tiny apartment near the prison, determined to maintain our weekly visits through his sentence. During our first meeting after sentencing, David seemed more at peace than before. "I don't want you rearranging your life around prison visits, Dad," he protested. "Family shows up," I said simply. "Your mother would have done the same. I have something for you." He slid a paper across the table, a program acceptance letter. "I've been approved for the chemical dependency counseling program, using my background to help others avoid this path." It wasn't redemption, nothing could bring back Thomas and Michael, but it was purpose growing from devastation, a way forward through the wreckage. The hardest lesson I've learned through this ordeal is that love isn't enough. I loved my son completely, yet missed the signs of his downward spiral. Loving someone means both supporting them and being vigilant when destructive patterns emerge. It means being willing to make the painful call to authorities when necessary, even when every instinct screams to protect your child. By making that 911 call, despite the heartbreak it would bring, I ultimately saved lives, perhaps even David's, giving him the chance to face consequences and find a better version of himself behind prison walls. Sometimes the most loving action is the one that feels most like betrayal in the moment. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to make an impossible choice regarding someone you love? Has anyone ever intervened in your life when you couldn't see danger yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found meaning in my story, please subscribe to hear more reflections on family, redemption, and the courage to make difficult choices. Remember to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear that doing the right thing, even when painful, is always worth it in the end. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to make those difficult calls when they matter most.